My name is Vera Locke, and I make my living off the dead. Not the stiffs in the morgue, mind you. The real money is in the ones who are still breathing, just scared enough to buy the papers, click the links, and hang on my every word. I don't report the news, I direct it. I give the squalor a little sparkle, the fear a catchy theme tune. In Las Vegas, that's not just a job, it's a sacrament. The city was sweating out another 110-degree night when my masterpiece hit the airwaves. A piece I'd cooked up called The Neon Strangler. I'd given him a gimmick. He didn't just kill, he staged his victims, left them in cheap hotel rooms, a single perfect orchid pinned to their chests. A detail I'd invented, whole cloth over a third glass of whiskey. It made the story sing. It made me a star. The phone buzzed on my glass desk, the screen lighting up my reflection. A face that looked like it had been carved from ice and paid for in cash. I let it go to voicemail. Then it buzzed again and again. Annoyance, sharp and hot, pricked at me. I snatched it up. "Locke," I said, my voice the smooth, practiced bourbon I used on camera. "Vera." The voice was gravel and old regrets. Detective Mason Pike. He used to feed me tidbits from the gutter, back when I was just another pretty face trying to get a byline. Now, he acted like he regretted ever knowing my name. "You busy?" "Always, Mason. Fame doesn't sleep. It just takes expensive naps. What do you want?" "We've got a body at the Sundown, on the Strip. You might want to see this." My pulse didn't so much as skip. A body in Vegas was like a dropped slot machine token, plenty of them around, and only the tourists got excited. "Why me? It's your turn to buy the donuts." "Because there's an orchid on her chest, Vera. A white phalaenopsis. Just like you described on the 6 o'clock news." The line went dead. I sat there for a full minute, the hum of the newsroom fading into a dull roar. A copycat. A fan. The thought wasn't fear, it was something else, something darker and more thrilling. A violation, yes, but of my copyright. My brand. The Sundown was a tired old casino, its neon sign flickering like a dying heart. Mason was waiting for me in the lobby, his suit as rumpled as his conscience. He looked at me like I was a stain he couldn't wash out. "Still selling fear, Vera?" he asked, leading me toward the elevators. "I call it journalism, Mason. You should try it sometime. Better payoff than shaking down tourists for jaywalking." The room was on the 12th floor. The air inside was thick with the smell of cheap perfume and something coppery that was trying very hard to be forgotten. The girl was on the bed, young, blonde, her eyes wide open to a ceiling she couldn't see. And there, pinned to the silk of her dress, was a perfect white orchid. It was exactly as I described it. The placement, the type of flower, even the angle of the stem. I'd made it all up. "See anything familiar?" Mason's voice was low, dangerous. "It's a good story, Mason," I said, my voice colder than the morgue slab she was headed for. "Tragic. You'll get your man. They always make a mistake." "Maybe the mistake was giving you the microphone in the first place," he shot back. "You built this monster, Vera. Every detail, every flourish, you wrote the script. He's just following directions." I turned on him, a smile I didn't feel plastered on my face. "Are you accusing me of something, detective? Because that sounds a lot like slander, and my lawyer loves slander. He buys vacation homes with it." He just stared at me, his eyes like chips of flint. He knew me. He knew how I worked, how I twisted things, but he didn't have a thing. Not yet. I left him there to his dusting and his bagging and his sad little police work. I had a story to reclaim. This was my narrative, my monster. I wasn't going to let some two-bit hack with a fetish for flowers steal my thunder. Back in my penthouse, the city lights spread out below me like a spilled jewel box. I poured myself another drink, the ice clinking a nervous rhythm in the silence. I wasn't scared. I was angry. This was my stage, my audience. Then my phone lit up again. Not a call, a text from an unknown number. It was just 3 words. "Did you like it?" I stared at the screen, the city's reflection swimming in the glass. For the first time that night, a cold, slimy tendril of fear snaked its way up my spine. This wasn't a fan. A fan would send praise. This was something else. This was a conversation. I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. "Who is this?" The reply was instant. "I'm your biggest fan, Vera. I loved the detail about the orchid. So poetic. But I think your next story needs a more personal touch." I stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling window. Down below, the traffic crawled like glowing insects. I looked at my own reflection in the dark glass, a pale, beautiful ghost against the glittering city. My phone buzzed again. Don't worry, I'll handle the details for you, just like you taught me. Fear is a currency, and I've been a mint my entire professional life. I mint it, I polish it, and I sell it at a premium. But that night, looking at my own reflection in the black glass, I felt a counterfeit version of it crawling up my throat. This wasn't the abstract fear I sold to the masses. This was personal, a breach of contract. He's not just copying my work, he's editing my life. The thought hit me like a slug of cheap gin. I had to get ahead of this. Not for justice, not for the poor dead girl with the orchid, but for the byline. The killer was my creation, and I'll be damned if I let him write a better ending than me. I spent the rest of the night in the digital morgue of KLAS TV, the station's archive room. It's a sterile, cold place where dead stories go to be forgotten. The hum of the servers was the only sound, a digital funeral dirge. I was looking for a lie, an old one, something with sharp edges I could use. I found it in a file from 5 years back, a story that put me on the map. The High Rider's Last Hand. I'd taken a 2-bit gambler's suicide and turned it into a mob hit. I invented a mob enforcer, a scar-faced goon I called the Grinder. I gave him a signature. He'd leave a single playing card, the ace of spades, on the body. It was all bunkum, of course. The guy, Lucky Leo Vance, had just lost his shirt and his nerve. But my version got better ratings. My phone buzzed, a phantom vibration in the silent room. Mason. I let it ring. He was a distraction, a bulldog chasing a fire truck. He didn't understand the artistry. He thought in terms of evidence and warrants. I thought in terms of narrative and impact. The archive door hissed open. There he was, filling the doorway, a silhouette of weary suspicion. "Crawling out of your own graveyard, Vera," he said, his voice flat. "Looking for new material?" "Just doing some research, Mason. Something you cops should try sometime. Instead of relying on my scripts." I didn't turn around. I kept my eyes on the screen, on the face of Lucky Leo Vance, a man whose life I had rewritten for a primetime audience. He walked closer, his shoes squeaking on the linoleum. "Funny you should mention scripts. I was just reading your old story about the Grinder. The ace of spades. Very dramatic." My blood went cold. "It's called color, Mason. Makes the drab world a little more interesting for the folks at home. Or it gives a psycho a new hobby." He leaned over my shoulder, his breath smelling of stale coffee. "Lucky Leo Vance, you quoted an anonymous source in that one. Said Leo was in deep with the mob. Any chance you remember who that source was? Or was he as imaginary as the Grinder?" I swiveled in my chair to face him, a smile carved on my lips. "My sources are my business detective. Always have been. You're just mad because my stories get more airtime than your press conferences." He stared at me, his eyes boring into mine, trying to find the lie behind the lie. "This isn't a story anymore, Vera. This is a feeding frenzy, and you're the one who threw the chum in the water. You keep playing the star, you're going to end up as the final act." He left, but his words hung in the air, thick and toxic. He knew. He didn't have proof, but he knew the foundation of my career was made of smoke and mirrors. And now, someone was using my smoke to start real fires. I had to find Leo Vance. He was the loose end, the personal touch the killer mentioned. If the killer was following my scripts, Leo was the next victim. I found him in a Fleabag motel downtown, a place that smelled of bleach and broken dreams. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open. Leo was in a chair, slumped over a table littered with empty bottles and poker chips. He wasn't dead from booze. There was a neat red line across his throat. And on the table next to his hand was a single playing card. Not the ace of spades. It was the queen of hearts. My phone buzzed on the table beside the card. I hadn't even heard it land. A new message. A photo. It was of me walking into the motel. The timestamp was from 2 minutes ago. The caption read, "Wrong card. I'm a better editor than you are. I thought you'd appreciate the irony." I looked up at the grimy window facing the street. My own reflection stared back, pale and horrified. Behind it, I could see the flashing red and blue lights of Mason's cruiser pulling up. He was fast. But the killer was faster. He wasn't just following my stories. He was watching me. He was inside my head, correcting my mistakes. And he was letting me know, with every move, that I was just a character in the story he was writing. The sirens got louder, a pack of wolves baying at the door. I didn't run. Where would I go? The whole city was a stage, and I was the star of this bloody show. I just stood there, staring at the Queen of Hearts, feeling the floor drop out from under me. Mason burst in, two uniforms flanking him. He took one look at the scene, me, the body, the card, and his face went from weary to granite. He didn't even have to say it. The accusation was in the set of his jaw, in the way he motioned for his men to secure the room. Vera, he said, my name like a lead weight in his mouth. You just can't stay away, can you? I found my voice, a cool, steady instrument I'd spent a decade tuning. I got a tip, Mason, anonymous, told me to be here. I was trying to get the story before you botched it. He walked around the table, his eyes never leaving mine. A tip? From who? The same ghost who's leaving you souvenirs? He gestured at the phone on the table. That your property? I shrugged, a gesture of practiced indifference. It's a work phone. Anyone could have the number. The lie was thin, gossamer, but it was all I had. This killer, he's smart. He's playing with us. With me. And you're standing here questioning the only person in this city who understands his mind. His mind? Mason let out a short, bitter laugh. Or your mind. You wrote the book, Vera. Every chapter, every bloody scene. The only question is whether you're just the author or you're hands-on. He was close now, his cheap cologne a sour cloud in the room. I could see the tiny, broken capillaries in his nose, the exhaustion etched around his eyes. He wanted to believe I was the monster. It would make his life simple. It would make him the hero. Arrest me, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. Go on. See what your DA says when I tell him you're harassing the city's most prominent journalist because you're too incompetent to catch a real killer. He held my gaze for a long, silent moment. The air crackled with a current of pure, undiluted hatred. Then he stepped back. Get her out of here, he told the uniforms, and don't let her touch anything. I walked out of that motel with my head held high, the cameras flashing as I emerged into the Vegas dawn. I gave them a performance, the brave reporter, shaken but determined. I talked about a city in fear, about a killer who needed to be stopped. I sold the lie so well, I almost believed it myself. Back in the penthouse, the illusion shattered. The floor-to-ceiling windows no longer felt like a throne. They felt like an observation tank. I was the specimen. The Queen of Hearts burned in my mind. Why that card? It wasn't one of mine. It was a correction, an improvement. I poured a drink, my hands shaking so badly the whiskey sloshed over the rim. I had to think. I had to find the pattern. But the pattern was me. The killer was pulling threads from a tapestry only I could see. Secrets I'd never told anyone. I went to my safe, hidden behind a painting of a bleak, abstract cityscape. Inside were the things I never wanted the world to see. My original, unedited notes from my first big story. The story of a runaway girl from a small town who came to Vegas to be a star and ended up dead in a ditch. A story I'd stolen, twisted, and used as my own launchpad. The girl's name was Sarah Jenkins. At the bottom of the file was a single photograph. Sarah, smiling, holding a deck of cards. She was a magician's assistant. Her favorite card to pull from a deck, she'd told me in an interview I later erased, was the Queen of Hearts. A cold dread, absolute and paralyzing, washed over me. He wasn't just editing my stories. He was digging up my sins, the ones I buried so deep I'd forgotten they were there. My phone buzzed. I jumped, spilling my drink. It wasn't a text. It was an image file. I opened it with a trembling thumb. It was a picture of the photograph of Sarah Jenkins, the one from my safe, the one no one else in the world had ever seen. Below it, a caption. Every good story needs a backstory. Now we have one. What's next, Vera? What's the grand finale? I sank to the floor, the glass of whiskey shattering beside me. He wasn't just watching me. He was in here. He was in my head, in my past, in my safe. He knew everything. Panic gave way to a cold, clear fury. He wanted a finale? I'd give him one. I'd give him a performance he'd never forget. I grabbed my keys and my press pass. If he wanted a show, I'd give him a live broadcast. I'd use my stage, my audience, my voice. I'd challenge him. I'd dare him to come out of the shadows. I was Vera Locke, after all. I didn't run from monsters. I interviewed them. And this time, the interview would be to the death. The studio lights were hot enough to melt makeup, but I felt cold, a deep, marrow-chilling cold that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. This was the cold of a tomb, my tomb. In the control room, the producer was counting down in my ear, his voice a tinny, frantic god. 5, 4. Vera, you're on in 3. Look at camera 1, 2. I stared into the black lens, into the eye of a million strangers. I saw my own reflection there, perfect, poised, a porcelain doll with a carefully crafted crack running down its center. I pasted on my signature smile, the one that said, "Trust me, I know the truth." This is Vera Locke, reporting live. My voice was smooth as silk, strong as steel. A lie, of course. I was a house of cards in a hurricane. For weeks, a shadow has fallen over our city, I began, the words flowing from a place of pure, distilled adrenaline. A killer who has sought to hijack the narrative, to turn our fear into his private theater. He has used my words, my reports, as a blueprint for his violence. He sees himself as an author, a creative force. I leaned in closer to the camera, my eyes burning with a fire that was half fury, half terror. But he's not an author. He's a plagiarist, a cheap derivative hack who can only steal from the work of others. His work is a pale imitation, a fan fiction of death, and I, for one, am tired of seeing my artistry vandalized. The producer was screaming in my ear, but I tuned him out. This was my show now. "So this is a message to you," I said, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that would carry in every living room in the valley. "You think you're writing my story? You think you can predict the ending? You're a footnote, a character I'm about to write out. You want a finale? You want a headline that will be remembered? Then come and get it. But don't hide in the shadows. Don't hide behind my old lies. Face me, in the light. Let's see who the real storyteller is." I held my gaze for a full 10 seconds of dead air, a silence so profound it was deafening. Then I looked away. And that's the report. Back to you, Tom. The red light on the camera flicked off. The studio was silent. Everyone was staring at me, their faces a mixture of awe and horror. I had just signed my own death warrant on live television. My phone vibrated on the desk. I didn't need to look. I knew it was Mason. He'd be watching, his face a thundercloud, already on his way. Too late, Mason. Always too late. I ignored the call. A moment later, a text came through, not from Mason, from the unknown number. It was an address. The Olympus Hotel and Casino, the penthouse suite. The message was short. "My set now. Come alone. The Olympus." I'd done a fawning 2-hour special on its grand opening a year ago. I'd interviewed the owner in that very suite, standing on the terrace, the city spread out at my feet like a carpet of diamonds. I'd called it the pinnacle of Vegas dreams. It was the height of my fabricated success. He was bringing me back to the scene of the crime, my crime. A strange calm settled over me. The panic, the fear, the rage, it all coalesced into a single sharp point of purpose. This was my story, my monster, my ending. I wasn't going to let him steal it. I wasn't going to let Mason save me. I was going to walk in there and look my reflection in the eye. I stood up, smoothed my jacket, and walked out of the studio, leaving a wake of stunned silence behind me. The elevator doors slid shut, reflecting my impassive face. I didn't look like a woman walking to her own execution. I looked like a star on her way to the final curtain call. The show must go on. It was the only truth I had left. The elevator doors sighed open onto the Olympus penthouse. It was exactly as I remembered, a tomb of marble and gold, smelling of expensive air freshener and quiet desperation. The city lights blazed beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. A silent, glittering audience. My audience. He wasn't here. The suite was empty, pristine, not a single thing out of place. It was an insult, a stage set with no actor. I walked to the bar, poured myself a glass of water, my hands steady. I wasn't a guest, I was home. The door to the suite clicked open. I didn't turn. I knew who it was. I could smell the stale coffee and the faint metallic scent of his gun. "Always making an entrance, Mason," I said, taking a sip of water. "To what do I owe the honor?" He didn't answer right away. I heard the soft thud of an evidence bag on the marble countertop. I turned. He was holding up my camera, the one I reported stolen last month after a hectic shoot downtown. "We found this at the last scene, Vera," he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. "The motel, with your prints all over it. Funny thing, the memory card was still inside, full of pictures, pictures of the victims, taken before they were dead." I felt a smile touch my lips. It was a reflex, a defense mechanism. "You're slipping, Mason. Planting evidence? That's not your style. You're the noble suffering type." I also have your handwriting, he continued, ignoring me, his eyes like chips of ice. A note, tucked into Leo Vance's pocket. It says, "The Queen always wins." We matched it to a dozen of your old scripts. He was walking toward me now, slowly, deliberately. You wanted a finale, Vera. You wanted a headline. You're going to get one. Famed journalist is Neon Strangler. It's got a nice ring to it, don't you think? I held his gaze. It's a bit on the nose, even for you. You're missing the poetry, Mason. The art. The art? He was on me now, his face inches from mine. There was a girl in that motel room with her throat cut. There was a girl with an orchid pinned to her chest. Where's the art in that, Vera? It's in the story, I whispered. It's always been in the story. He shook his head, a flicker of something like pity in his eyes. No more stories. He grabbed my wrist, the metal cold and final as he snapped the cuff on it. You're under arrest. As the second cuff clicked around my other wrist, my phone, lying on the bar, vibrated. Mason glanced at it, then back at me. He thought it was a lawyer, a producer, someone coming to save me. He didn't understand. No one was coming to save me. Pick it up, I said, my voice calm, serene. He hesitated, then grabbed the phone with his free hand and swiped it open. The screen lit up his face, showing a picture of the hotel, taken from the street below. The penthouse windows were dark squares against the glittering facade. Mason squinted at the caption beneath the photo. Smile for your headline. He looked up, confused from the phone to the black windows. What is this, some kind of joke? I wasn't looking at him. I was looking down at the reflection in the polished surface of the bar. In the dark glass, I saw the phone. I saw the hand holding it, my hand, and I saw the face behind the phone, smiling. It was my face. The laughter started deep in my chest, a small, broken thing. It grew, bubbling up my throat, spilling out into the silent, opulent room. It wasn't a sound of joy or madness. It was the sound of a lock turning, of a door finally opening. Mason was staring at me, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. He thought he'd cornered a killer. He didn't realize he'd just helped a woman arrest herself. My last lie wasn't to him or to my audience or even to myself. My last lie was pretending there was a him at all. The reflection in the glass wasn't a killer hiding in the shadows. It was the director, the author. The part of me that got tired of reporting the story and decided to write it for real. The part that knew the only way to create a perfect, unforgettable headline was to become the story. Mason was still talking, his voice a distant, meaningless buzz. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was already writing the final copy in my head, the one true story I would ever tell. My final headline writes itself. Journalist exposes killer, herself.